Welcome back, everybody. If you are here, and I see that at least one of you are, welcome back. We are in the kitchen. This is episode number 5 with Shams Nelson, an old friend of BattleSauce and a proprietor of his own unique corner of nerddom. Shams, how are you, sir? Welcome.
Doing well. Excited to chat. Always a good chat when we get together.
Yeah, always looking forward to it.
Very much so, and just a little bit of backstory here from my end of things. I'm the newest member to Team BattleSauce, and your name was already being bandied about as a nerdery badass. So it's very cool having you here. A couple things with Shams is he's the proprietor and operator and amazing artist for Pen and Blade on Instagram. He is developing a role-playing concept called Chibi World. Did I get that right?
World of Chibu, but could be a work in progress name. So
that's how it translates over here.
Yeah.
This is good market research.
Saying that, actually, just to let everybody know, Shams, you are in, and I want to make sure I get this right at least a little bit. You are in South Africa?
No, I'm in Mauritius. I was in South Africa. Now I've been in Mauritius for about a year and a half. But, yeah, basically the other side of the world. So that's the important thing you need to
know. That's very cool. So it's 9 o'clock here, Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. What time is it there?
It's 6 something. No, is it 5 or 6? It's 5. It's 5. We were going to meet at 6.
Yeah.
So your day is already kind of winding down. Thank you for showing up. It's very complicated if you have a interglobal community and getting everybody sort of lined out. I want to jump right in. I am super eager to pick your mind and see a couple things. We were chatting earlier, all of us here, and you had mentioned you have a few questions for us, maybe.
Yeah.
Be careful.
And cool ideas I want to hear your thoughts on, too.
Sweet.
Right on. As another game person, though, so you are a game designer. You're an artist. I would call you a technician also. You really seem to have a good head for tinkering and mechanics and noodling things out. When BattleSauce was new to me, and I'll just be honest, hyper confusing. You seem to understand it, and so you came in. You got a good, apparently, overall machine running for this kind of stuff, this role-playing nerdery. And we always like to find out as the people that are in this with us, the community we're hoping to build here, how does that start? What got you there? The inspiration, the impetus for that.
Oh man! So I think the seed was planted. I don't know why I've always enjoyed fantasy for one thing, just as a genre. But I think the seed was planted in my elementary school years when I found the old school AD&D second edition. I think it was. Manuals at the library, and I just saw these, like, I don't know why they made them so hectic. Like, honestly, it's that whole satanic panic or whatever. They kind of brought it upon themselves. Because have you seen the covers of those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The most, like, demonic, dark, like, just evil-looking stuff to put right on the cover. And then you open it up and there's a unicorn. Like, if they had switched that, it could have been a whole different story.
Yeah.
Luckily, my parents didn't take mine to that in mind. I would check that book out from the library and I would just, like, read the random excerpts and just look at these numbers and go, what the hell do these numbers mean?
Yeah.
I had no freaking idea as a child. But it fascinated me. I knew there was something deeper. And then in middle school, on a rainy day, when they have you, everyone hustles into the auditoriums and stuff. Everyone's like crowded in there, and smells all damp and stuff. I saw someone with the 3.5 edition D&D manual, and I was like looking over his shoulder, like, what is that? And he's like, do you want to play? And then that's when I've just been fascinated by the idea.
So he was like, do you love Satan too?
Yeah, exactly.
But it was the art, though. You're right. It was the art, the cover stuff.
I think the art is, that's probably the first thing that's true, because I never would have, if it was just a plain covered book at the library, I don't think I would have taken 2 glances at it. So it's a really good point that, like, and then when I looked over his shoulder, if it was just text on a book page, I wouldn't have been noticed anything. But I saw, like, these cool characters, and it's like, yeah. So it's true. The tabletop RPG and
Shout out to all of those artists. I think easily did most of those front covers for the D&D work back then.
Right.
And man, they're on the shelf right over here too. They're amazing. Right. And to this day, when you open one of those up, at the Monster Compendiums, oh my God, dude! I used to buy those just for the art. I never read anything really, except their special attacks to see what all those fangs did. But it's always the art for me. Always.
That's where I was. No, it's true.
Did you get into playing after that, or?
No, not until the 3.5. So I just what planted the seed as the AD&D. And actually, interestingly, I've been having to learn a little bit more about second edition because the Dungeoneers Guild, or Dungeoneering Guild, is a publishing company that still publishes modules for AD&D, and I just wrote. I was hired to write one of the modules that'll be coming out. I don't know when, but I just finished the first draft. Yeah, and it was a big achievement. It's very old school fantasy, Quest for the Dark Gauntlet, at least that's the working title.
I love it.
Right, a little wizard and a power and undead minions and all that stuff, And one of the things I really appreciated about that old school vibe, at least the way that he kind of sold it to me, is that you don't need to overdevelop things. Leave room for the dungeon master to add all that nuance and backstory if you want. But the fact that an evil wizard has a powerful artifact and he's building an army, that's enough. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And you don't need to know what happened in childhood that straight put him on the path to darkness and who his best buddy is.
Dude, without knowing it, man, you have hit on the crux that Startsman and I. Any argument we have about game design, world building, any issue or conflict, essentially comes down to exactly that. I cannot have a wizard building an army with an artifact without understanding where the artifact's from, who the wizard is, why he wants to build the army, why the people in the army want to help him. For me, it's almost a compulsion now that the narrative element, when it starts, it is just out of the gates, and I have very little control over reining that in. Conversely, Startsman is great at that. He's like, why? Why do we need all that backstory? It's a wizard with an artifact and an army. What else do you need?
Yeah, have at it.
One concept that I've come across recently that I think you guys are two polarities in this dichotomy, which is interesting. And it's probably great because I imagine you balance each other out perfectly. Because I think I'm like you, Adam, where I like to really get into the backstory and the reasons why and the nuances and the relationships, and the director or the editor, the guy who hired me to write this module, had to rein it in, and then I was like, oh, this is kind of cool because you can still, as a dungeon master, you can add those stories. You can
absolutely,
it almost gives you a little bit more of a canvas, to paint what your wizard is, fit him into your already functioning campaign and world. But the two sides of the polarity are the narrative, the storyteller, and then on the other side is the gamer. So a gamer, you throw someone in a game, you could play a board like chess. What is the backstory for chess? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if anyone. Maybe that's something that needs to be written. Maybe it's about time.
We're putting chess in the rules now. It's a
never is one. Yeah,
honestly, BattleSauce would do that. That'd be dope. But yeah, you don't know why the king and queen are fighting, or why the kings are fighting each other. You're just cool, here are the mechanics. And on the very other side of that is a novel, where there's no gaming involved, but it's a whole story. And I feel games bridge those two gaps where you can be a little bit more on I like to play the game and the mechanics and the fun of it, and treat it like a game, or more oh no, I'm treating this a simulation of a world that exists, and these are just mechanics to help me simulate what would be a real living, breathing reality of its own.
Yeah, so, I think that's real interesting. I think that's real interesting because I'm always to me the fun of that is why are they fighting? I don't need to tell you that. You can put all your own stuff in there, and I think that's really the purpose of what for Dungeons and Dragons, what a DM does. That's their job, to give you that story to help fill in the gaps. Ours is just sort of give you those bullet points. Here are the things that are going on. You take it from here. Though some people don't work that way. Some people really want it all spoon-fed to them and can't sort of develop that story on their own without some sort of a concept. But I think, to me, it's like everybody that plays D&D, they know about that storytelling aspect of it. They know that's just part of the game, and that's, deeply involved in all that homebrewing stuff and all that kind of thing is really feeds that because the mechanics are already there. So that's why I always find it kind of interesting, and Adam just cannot, for the life of him, let it go. We will have...
I just can't, and it feels like
you have like a dusty tome under your bed where you like secretly write out all the lore of BattleSauce that Michael doesn't want to hear.
There are things like that actually. Google Docs is littered with it. Littered with those things. Well, and yourself again, the art that you do is amazing. You've done some art for us. You just did a nice piece for us with the boiled down. The cover piece for that looks awesome.
That was amazing.
Don't forget, you can get that on Discord if you want, guys out there.
You can. It's not on there yet, but it will be.
Very soon it will be there. But you have a very fluid style, and you have a quick turnaround, and you have work that looks really, really clean and very professional. And Starsman and I were just talking about that. I think you use Procreate, right?
Yeah, these days mostly Procreate, exactly. Yeah.
So, again, because I also use it, and it still takes me 9 years to do anything, and you seem to be able to turn a piece around within hours at times.
He was done by the time I finished asking him. I was like, "Hey, Shams," he's like, "Yep, how's this look?" I was like, "Okay, great."
So, are you trained? Do you have a classically trained background for art, and mechanics of art, and then you get to play with it now, or is it something you've had to kind of come to yourself?
So first off,
I'll so badass, Johns.
What's that?
How are you so badass? Man?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We all want to know.
No, that's too kind. First off, I've got to say that collaborating with you guys is usually like puts me on that super speed for some reason. Like, I'm a fast worker for sure. I've always known this and I've heard it a lot. But like something like you got the ideas you send my way, I'm always like, ooh, that's fun. Like, and when something's fun, it flows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do have a background in art. I got my fine arts degree from Academy of Arts University, the one in San Francisco. Did it almost all online. But I gotta say, towards the end of that degree, I was gonna drop out because I realized, when it comes to getting hired as an artist, your degree doesn't mean anything. I figured this out pretty late. It's the portfolio. People have never been asked to show any credentials or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's just like, do they like your artwork or not? And so I ended up changing my degree at the last minute to art history, but I studied like illustration. And like today, the resources are all online too. You know, you can get an amazing education through all these online digital painting schools run by industry experts who have the experience, have the skills, and are wonderful teachers. So, and even just YouTube, like you said, Pen and Blade started off as an art tutorial channel where I was sharing some stuff that I learned. And then I kind of started to lead that more on the fantasy side and started a new channel called Pencil Power where I do my art tutorials, and then the fantasy stuff is in Pen and Blade. But yeah, no, I really, I love, I've always enjoyed art. And so the thing about working fast, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to find the workflow that works for you. Because that's like, I have when I do certain pieces, it'll be a lot faster than others, but like, depending on the style. So like for the piece that I did for you guys, it's sketch, then it's line art, then it's flat colors, then it's a shadow layer on multiply, then it's highlights. And that's like, I know that's my step-by-step process. So I don't have to, tinker around too much to figure out, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do here? And then if I do a more painterly style, I also have a pretty step-by-step, system. And so I think that like kind of unlocks the creativity because you don't get stuck behind the technical barriers as much. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually what we kind of came around to discussing you earlier. Before we jumped on here was my thinking was that you understood the rules so well that you get to play with them kind of willy nilly, and there's a freedom to that. I don't know who it was, but I heard a little while ago a quote that once you, and this is totally chopping it to hell, but you have to understand a thing before you can change a thing. And so being able to really get in there and just crank out what you do, man, it's outstanding. Is with art and with storytelling and with game design, with world building, is there an aspect of that that you find like super enjoyable? Like that's the meat of it right there. Where for me, I have those, but it all becomes like a slog at some point. Just So is there one where when you hit a peak with it, you're like, this is the thing?
No, I mean, I think I'm like you. I love it all. Even the nitty gritty mechanics. Like, I'll sit there and try to figure out like systems for things that I'll never actually create like a full RPG out of this or something.
Yeah.
It's like, what if this? Actually, I wanted to share an interesting idea with you guys. I think it could either show up in BattleSauce, or I started developing a whole nother system. I was listening to the Arthurian legends, like King Arthur and the Knights of Camelot, and learning about knight tournaments. I was like, how cool would it be to play like a knight who goes to these different tournaments and like gains like wealth and honor is kind of like the working title there for wealth and honor or something. So one of the things I realized of thinking about the mechanics and stuff is that there's I think I could, again, it's another dichotomy. I think I like these things when there's two sides of the coin, or these aren't two sides of the coin, just two aspects of gaming are strategy and skill, right?
Yeah.
So strategy, I think, is like planning, thinking, like making choices, and then skill is in executing something like on the spot. And I think like the appeal to me towards video games is that I don't get as much of in like tabletop RPGs in general, and also sports and things like that, and actual like sparring. I love to we used to practice a lot of sword fighting and stuff, and me and my friends would go out in the forest with our Nerf swords. So we cut out the bottom, put in a wood tube that you get from Home Depot, so they're not all flimsy, and we take our Nerf swords and freaking battle for like hours. And really like and so there's like the skill aspect of it, like real time in the moment. How well can you execute? And I was thinking, like, you know what? And you can get better at skill. So even if you have a poor strategy, if you're skillful enough, that'll compensate. You know what I mean? You can pull it off. You can pull it off, right? Like if you're just like amazing at a sport, if you don't like think about your bigger strategy, but you can just like basketball, you can just dribble past everyone and dunk it. You got those skills, like that takes a long way. In tabletop RPGs, the skills are implied by the character's stats, right? But you as a player, there isn't really much room for improvement. You can't get better at rolling the dice, or there's nothing that like you can have an edge on someone else. Exactly, but that's what I thought. I'm like, can you get better at rolling dice? I like Michael did a little finger.
You don't know it, but he's vibrating in his seat right now. You are speaking BattleSauce language, man.
I wonder if we had like similar. I think the card mechanics that you guys threw into there, that can make that. I need to actually play with it to see. But like poker is a skill-based game. Like card games have a skill aspect.
Yes, so, that's absolutely the reason we use cards, is because they not only work into the battle, but they work into your character's trade and their protein. So then that means whenever you're playing, even if you're doing the narrative part that everybody seems to love. just kidding. Whenever you're doing that and you're drawing cards, to move or whatever, you can take those cards and use them as a strategy. When you see it, you can take it and you can put it aside and be like, I know I'm going to have a battle later, or I've got a skill that can use this card. I'm going to set it aside, even though it's a good card, for movement or battle, what have you. I can use it for my protein's abilities, or I can use it for, advancing in my trade, or I could use it for doing a cool finishing move. But the neat thing is it takes that card. It also takes that card out of play. So you got to think about the way in which, well, maybe I want to use it right now. If I use it now, it's going to be in the discard pile. I won't have that opportunity to use it later on. And I think that kind of stuff to me is like really exciting and makes the game a lot more fun because you really have to think about what you're doing and sort of strategize and be like, yeah, I want to build up all of these cards over here, so when it comes to a battle or it comes to me trying to pull off something that I can't normally do, I've got a backlog of things that'll make this easier for me. And that's the thing that always frustrated me about dice, because dice it's always just random. Even if you're throwing 7 dice down, it's still random numbers that you're getting. But cards, you get to see it, and you can set them aside, or you know what the color might do something, or the number might do something, or the suit might do something. There's so many different opportunities there that I think that's really cool. Sorry.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an extra layer of strategy, and then I think there's a little bit of the skill component too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what I'm thinking about for the skill side in rolling dice. I've come up with two options, and I feel like maybe this will open up the floodgates for other designers to come up with more ideas, because this is a novel concept I haven't come across before. And so the idea that I had with the rolling the dice to add a skill component is to have on your table a bullseye, right?
Wow.
And you roll the dice into the bullseye. What's that?
Oh my God, I said, holy shit, you just spoke to the level, man. That's awesome.
That is fantastic.
Right? I mean, I think this is a crazy... So, like, and then I would say, like, I haven't decided exactly, but, like, either the where you get it on the bullseye gives you the basis. So if it's, like, the outer rim is, like, a 5, and then you add whatever's on the dice, and, like, the full bullseye is, like, a 15, and you add whatever you end up on the dice. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, like, for, like, archery, like, there'd be archery competitions, and I was thinking for this wealth and honor thing. So that's, like, a really cool way to, like, bring that flavor in, too, where it's, like, if you get it in the center, and then maybe even you can do things like the dice is sitting in the center, that's your opponent's dice. If you can knock their dice out with your dice and put them in another bracket, it's like you split the arrow or something like that. You know what I mean? And then I started having other ideas, like what about for jousting, you set up corks. A guy took a cork from my in-laws wine bottle, and I was like, what if you set that up and you have to try to knock it over? And if you knock it over, you get like a certain plus to your roll. So there's like the skill of the actual physical, so you can actually sit at home, practice rolling dice, like, you know, to improve your skills. And if you just become like baller at it, you can roll bullseyes all the time. Like, hey, that's a skill that you've improved at.
That's awesome. And I think what's going to happen with that is when this interview's over, when we're done, Startsman's probably going to ask me if I want to work on my own projects, and then get a hold of you to come over to BattleSauce, because in 8 minutes, you have made him happier than I have in nearly 2 years of this.
Aw, don't say that.
Oh, man. I'm the other woman. I'm the other woman. Sorry, man. I didn't know.
For real.
For BattleSauce, what I can see being a cool one is the card in the hat.
Uh-huh.
Throwing cards in like a hat or something. You know, I used to work on that skill. I was like, you know what? I'm going to develop card throwing skills. Have you seen people who can throw cards and like stick in walls and stuff like that?
I want to learn that.
I don't know how to
do
that. That could be an interesting thing. Or building card houses. Like something like as you play the game, you know, when you use a card, instead of discarding it, you can start to build a card house. And
that would be pretty sweet.
Happens until it knocks over. Like.
Well, and this is a perfect illustration of how nuts it can get when you start tinkering in the mechanics of things. So with that in mind then, when you do, and forgive me please, World of Chibu.
Chibu.
Right?
Chibu. Yeah.
Chibu. Damn it, I gotta enunciate different. The World of Chibu, is there, when you're doing the mechanics for that, when you're doing the world building, so for me, I always come back to mechanics afterwards, because I know kind of what's happening on the lower level with it when I'm, you know, making notes, writing out concepts. I kind of already know where the mechanics are for me, but I'm an old school, like, D10er. I've been playing the D10 games for years now, decades at this point, and it's hard for me to shift gears, right? But when you come up with a game like BattleSauce or World of Chibu, you get into this place where the mechanics become a little more specifically geared. And so do you come back to that later? Is that in your head initially? How do you handle that?
See, that's I think the big, so it's such a like interplay. So I had this idea for like the aesthetic for the world. Like as an artist, I like drawing these kind of cute chibi type characters with the big heads, but like making them like with their swords, like a little necromancer. So he's like cute, but they're like badass at the same time.
I love it.
I like that. Right, that vibe for a role-playing game. Like I love D&D and other games and stuff, but like it's a different vibe. It's a little more serious and sober and stuff. And I'm like, what if it could be a little more lighthearted? And I thought the rules should also reflect that, where it's a little less intense on like the details, but I still wanted to simulate this world. So it's been like a kind of a struggle actually, because the more I realize, the more you start to simulate a world, the more in-depth the rules become. And then the more you try to make it like a game that you can just pick up and have fun, the less options you have to really create whatever narrative, whatever characters, whatever situation you want, which I think is one of the big things that appeal to me in tabletop RPGs in general.
Absolutely.
The ability to be so creative and to create anything and have the rules support that.
Yes.
So it's been a really tough point, especially when I got to the magic system. And this is something I wanted to pick your brains about, is like, what do you do when you hit a roadblock? For me, it was the magic system in World of Chibu, where I'm like, do I come up with like a huge list of spells? But I'm like, that's something I don't love about Dungeons and Dragons as much.
Right.
Is that the spells are so specific, and that feels somewhat limited. I want magic to be something, and that's one of the things that actually appealed to me about BattleSauce, was that like, oh, cool, you come up with what you are imagining to be the magic or the special skills and stuff, and then the rules support that. You create the rules around that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of like unsure of which direction to go and how to approach a magic system. I want it to be fluid enough so you can get creative, but I also want the rules to be supportive enough that it feels somewhat like fair, or easy to be like, okay, cool, I'll do this and I'll do that, and here are the numbers I get. And that turned out to be a struggle, and that was like the roadblock I hit, and I was like, I've been working on this on and off for a couple of years, and it's like I can feel that that's like a bigger hurdle I need to overcome, and then to get to that final polished state where it can really start to go out there and
Yeah.
So what do you guys do? I mean, I'm sure, have you run into roadblocks like that in the?
Yes. Yes, we have.
I assume so, right?
I'll let Michael. I'll go first because my answer is going to be a lot shorter and less informed. I start arguments is what happens when we run into a roadblock like that. Here's the thing: I trust Michael in a way that I don't trust a lot of people. In that I'm not. And here's, I think, a big chunk of that. You have to be able to communicate what you think needs to be heard without becoming an a-hole about it, right? And so Startsman has allowed me to improve that skill set. We're able to talk now more than me get red in the face. And when you talk about hurdles and hiccups, again, for us, it came back to the narrative versus the mechanical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Startsman typically like the mechanical aspect because, like you said, you want the action to move. You want it. It's weird. You have to have a game concept so well hammered out on the front end that to the players, it just looks like ease of access. Everything the player does should be ease of access. But on the end of the world building of it, you have to know the rules, right? You have to know why the dragon dropped out of the tiles above your head. Where did the dragon come from? Why is it there? And you don't have to know that to play, but I feel like you need it. And I went a little bit longer with that answer, but for me, the hurdles were narrative meeting the mechanics. I don't know what you're going to say, Michael, but maybe it was me.
It was just that it's like a creative clash of energies. Is that kind of what I'm hearing, where you would just go at it and then
it all works out.
It all works out.
Well,
that's why I think having a partner, someone to work with on something, such a blessing and such a cool, such a powerful thing.
I think coming back to your question though, Shams, about the hurdles and the way in which they're approached, and in particular your magic system. for me, like one of the first things I did when I was Magic was one of the first complicated mechanics that I came up with. You know, because the battle was pretty simple. It was you essentially play 21. There's some we've updated that a little bit to where now you can, like 21 or blackjack, you can bet. You can bet before you play, so your weapon can do like maximum damage. But if it backfires on you, their weapon does maximum damage because it's you've left yourself open for a critical attack. So that sort of speeds that kind of stuff along. But like for Magic, one of the things I didn't want it to be like Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't want you to have like a set list of spells that you would go through. I wanted the whole thing that we're trying to do with BattleSauce is to make it so that a player can be like, well, I want to do this kind of spell, and I want to be able to play, pick up this weapon, or I want to be able to do that. How does that work? So one of the first approaches I took was like, well, what are some cool spells? And I came up with some cool spells, and I thought, all right, now how would you make this work through Magic? And then I sort of worked through that a little bit. And then when I came up with something that I liked, I was like, all right, now that I've got that idea for the mechanics, will it work for anything else? How will it work if I want to make up something that isn't these spells that I just put together? Like I don't know. If you were to do Fireball from Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is, how would that work in BattleSauce? And the system held up really well, but there are like three or four different things in our Magic system that you have to think about. And we just sort of ran it through the cycle. It's like, yes, this works for everything that you want to be able to do, and it sort of speaks to how easy it is to be able to pick it up and play it at this point. And now players can choose any Magic spell they want. We give them like a list of 20, I think, just sort of as ideas. Yeah. And then a set list of like, here's all you need to do to think about it, because these are the mechanics. When you want to create a spell, is it dark magic? Is it light magic? Does it heal or does it hurt? Those are like the four things that you have to think about. And then the cards will dictate how you move forward with that. And I think that's the way we typically approach any sort of hurdle. We did that with the vehicle mechanics together too. Adam and I spent like a couple of days trying to figure out, all right, what makes using a vehicle fun. You want it to be fast and exciting, and you want to be able to test your skill against other people. And it's like, so how do we do that? And I had like all these cool mechanics that I wanted to do, and it's like none of this actually works. This is like slowing it down. In fact, how do we go from making driving a car to like racing it through the streets of some cyberpunk city or whatever? And so we came up with, again, using the cards as a way to facilitate different aspects of the vehicles and stuff. And it's like, all right, and does this work for everything? And we went through all the steps of, it works for this, it works for ships, it works for cars, and so that's the way we approach it. We come up with
you actually build like a deck of cards for your ship, right?
Yeah.
So like if you have a small ship, it might only have like, I don't know, 5-10 cards in it, or I don't know,
13
number, like 13.
Like
a bigger ship, I have a whole freaking deck. It's like Starship Enterprise vibe would be like a proper, which is cool because you have that thing in your hand and it feels like you're holding your ship or something.
It does. It really does.
And
that's really.
And you can get.
The idea of making the game at all is for the people that experience it, that have a good time, and it's super exciting when you can do that. It's even more exciting when you do that, and you want to play the game you just wrote. Even though you've spent hours writing mechanics, you can, then you want to play it. You just want to get in there and just play it. Have you had a chance to play your game yet? In your world?
Oh my gosh. So the thing that happened was, I was going to do a play test, and what I realized as soon as I got like up to the point where we were about to do a little play test, I started noticing all the little holes.
Oh no!
My mechanics and all the little things. And that's why you play test. I was like, okay, never mind. Let me go work on these, and then come back and do it. Like in my mind, it worked, but then when you actually sit down to play, you're like, oh, I don't know, or like, wait, maybe that, So it's such a big step in the process. So yeah, I actually need to get back. I need to start doing that more. But yeah, I haven't really had the chance to really like sit down and play a proper game. So it's an untested territory.
You seem really happy, and I say that because Mike and I often scowl a lot when we realize we've not played for like 6 months or sat, at a table with each other for weeks and weeks and weeks. Do you have anybody else helping you out with this, or is it mostly just you?
Well, so my wife, who we got married a year and almost 2 years ago, I think.
Oh my gosh!
No, a year ago, but we met like 2 years ago. But thank you, yeah. I'm terrible with dates. I hope she doesn't listen to this. But she already does. So I won't even remember how old I am. I'm at that level. I have to ask her. But yeah, no, she has really gotten into the whole tabletop role playing game RPG vibes. So before that, it was mostly just me and friends that I have that I met through. One of the things that's amazing about the internet and social media, having this YouTube channel, to being on. I've met a lot of cool people around the world. A lot of them I haven't even met in person, but I consider them some of my closest friends. And we're playing a D&D campaign with a couple of people who live one in Germany, two in Europe, and we've been playing. We just passed the 1 year benchmark of one single campaign, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, but it's hard to find that. So actually, one thing I did is I tested the wealth and honor mechanics with Sophia, my wife. And we played just like a quick, instead of having a whole RP, I was like, okay, cool. You'll just make this is just kind of a random character, and you show up at a Knights tournament, and these are the 3 events, and I kind of just want to run through each of them, and it worked pretty well. So yeah, and I was like, okay, this is a really good sign that we're in the right direction. We kind of tweaked things as we played and things like that. But I think that's the thing, having someone else to work off, bounce ideas off of, do light play testing where the stakes are low, that is such a valuable thing. And one thing that I think what you guys are building on BattleSauce could be, because it sounds like with the people you're meeting in the kitchen, it sounds like there are a lot of game developers and stuff. So it could be a really cool community to start to connect, and be like, hey, you want to form a partnership? We can help each other work on our games.
Yeah.
Shoot ideas off each other. That's what we've been doing, which has been amazing.
Yeah.
You absolutely nailed it. Be in the Kitchen is really specifically for that reason only. The community, and again, this is all Michael. I jumped on. It's been how long? A year and a half now, maybe 2 years.
Yeah, about 2, I think.
I've been with you.
Yeah.
And when I jumped on, he had already established the idea that there is a community there, and that BattleSauce could be a hub for those to overlap and build an actual foundation. We want to do homebrew conventions and get people together and do things like that, because, and again, even with the whole debacle with the licensing and everything and all the money that is now seen to be in this entertainment, there's and the homebrew games and self-promoted merchandise and concepts is just staggering. There's people doing this. I have students. I'm in a high school, and I have to remind some of my students often to stop writing character sheets and to draw. I'm like, draw your character, dude. Draw the character. But and so they're home brewing at an early age now. It's in the streets, it's everywhere. And I think that's pretty badass. And so the community aspect is a big deal for us too. And I don't know, is there, and I ask everyone this, at some point in these little chit chats, what the short term goal might be and the longer term goal. And there's obvious answers: get the game done, get more people there to interact with it. But I mean, this is sort of a life thing too for us. The idea that you exist in this state of hyper creativity, whatever you're doing, whether it's music, art, writing, game building, designing. So what? Yeah, is there are there Sean specific sort of goals that you want to hit with that too?
So one of my problems, I don't know, one of my quirks, I'm sure there's a positive and negative side of this. Actually, I kind of know what it is that I'm not exceptionally goal oriented as far as on the physical material plane of being I want to do this by this time, or I want to achieve this, or blah blah blah. So I'll give you the deeper. I think what came to me when you were talking about is what's the deeper goal that I would like to achieve in my lifetime in relation to all this. And I think what it really is the opportunity to experience things that you couldn't experience in the physical world. as it stands today. So the like there that journey you take like as a character in a tabletop RPG, or and the exploration of like sides of you and like how you could react in this situation or would react, or how this impacts you. I think that's really, really interesting. And the narratives you put together, and especially when there's more than one mind, it's not just you by yourself. I love imagining.
Oh my God.
But when you put another person in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
and they throw a wrench into your story, or they throw, a left hook that you weren't expecting, and then you're like, okay, where are we going from here?
Yeah.
I love that.
Like
I love
today, I built this is actually really cool. But this is going to be the first time in a long time I've been able to find a group of people, like our best friends who all live in the neighborhood here, all interested in playing D&D, and there's 4 of us. There were 4 people in person, so I was like, let me just do this. We're going to try to use computers the least amount possible. Everything's going to be pen and paper and, real dice and sitting around the table, pizzas. Like, I want to do the whole old school style. And so this is the first time he's created a character, so I sat with him, we had coffee. And as we were going through it, he was like, he wanted to be this half-orc cleric. And we looked at the different options. And he's like, I like this tempest thing. So it's like a storm. And then we looked at, okay, I'm going to be a sailor. And then we were like, what would your deity be? And he's like imagining like an octopus symbol. And I was like, okay, cool. And yeah, the octopus, like the arms represent the different ways that water can manifest itself, from a storm to a calm sea, to life-giving, to salt water that you can't drink.
Ooh.
It's like all different, and like together we came up with like this pantheon and world. And he was like, I think like my father was a slave, he's like a half orc. So I was like, how would that work, because that's unlikely in this world. Okay, his father's a slave, and then his mother and father sent him off on a ship because they didn't want anything to do with him when he was young. And I was like, okay, now you've also introduced slavery to this world where the orcs are actually enslaved by the humans. But the orcs are always seen as the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
But now that there's this thing where it's like now the humans are enslaving these bad races, and kind of it brings up a lot of like questions of morality, and like also echoes things that have happened in the real world past. And like that's an experience thank God we don't actually have to have that experience in this day and age anymore. Like in general, I know still bad things happen, but I think we've come a long way as a species. But like, you don't want to experience that in the real world. But it's interesting to explore in a fantasy world in a game and see like, are you going to be the savior? Are you going to be the villain? Is it somewhere in between? There's all the gray. And so yeah, that collaboration where I wouldn't have come up with that myself, and now I'm so excited to riff off that, and we're kind of working together, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that evolves.
Very
So
much.
that's what yeah.
Well, and so like that, and yes, right, because that's kind of my end of it too. I feel like the deeper meaning for any of this, and I know people that when this kind of talk comes up, they're like, you're just wasting hours. What are you doing? There's nothing there. What is this thing? And I think you hit it right on the head, man. It's a narrative, and at least for me, that's how I always view it. And it's that deeper questioning of, yes, there are games you just want to have a robot, cyborg, mutant dog guy with Gatling gun arms and jet gluteus backpack, and like whatever, right? There are those times you just want to like raise hell and just have a good time, but the deeper part of it, I think, is reflective of us, and since I've been playing, since I was like 12 in some capacity or other, and there always is a moment where a game hits a chord with me, like that was meaningful somehow. There's an element to this that is meaningful, whether it's ethical reflection, moral, whatever that is, even how your like game buddies interact. I think that all kind of comes into play, and it's one of the oldest versions of communication I think we have as a species. Storytelling. You got to make sense of the lightning and the sun and the fire and the water, and I think out of that comes magic. And I think that's kind of what we do as gamers. I think we still weave that mental magic, that imagination magic. It's pretty badass. But I'm a deep dive nerd, so this may all be just horse shit. I don't know. But it feels right to me. You know? Feels right to me.
I think you're onto something. I think even in the Gatling gun, jetpack, badass just blowing something up, like that's an archetype that's representing something in you.
Right, yeah.
And maybe people are drawn to that because we don't get to run around with jetpacks and Gatling guns in this world. We gotta play by the rules. We gotta stay in line, to some degree. So it's like a way of being like, this is what I would do if I was unleashed in some capacity. Like there's a part of me lives in this energy.
Yes.
And it reminds me too. Actually, I had this really interesting concept I came up with. My wife is a trainer for life coaching, and so I've done a lot of the trainings with her. And there's all these processes, right, where you go through, and they're all different kinds of things. But I started to realize, like, or like table role playing in general, fantasy role playing, I kind of gravitate towards. But it's an amazing way to explore different sides of you and kind of put just a little bit of space so it's not as personal. We all have like wounds or questions or things that are uncomfortable, and we don't want to just put them right out there. So what I did was I made up this whole system where it's like you create a metaphorical kind of version of yourself. There's like a character creation process where you create like your avatar as a fantasy character. And then you look at like, okay, what is a struggle that you have in your life, And then you personify that as like a villain. It's like, what does that look like? Does it look like
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Does it look like a fog cloud that obscures your vision? Because that's like a great metaphor. It's like, yeah, I can't see through this issue that I'm having. And then you look at what tools your character has, which are also metaphorical to your life skills, and be like, can I use any of these tools to dispel the fog, or do I need to discover a new tool? And it just puts enough space between you and the issue. Like if the fog cloud is like depression, it's like a really hard thing to look at, and it's something you're struggling with. You can look at it a little bit like, at a distance, and kind of also lighten it a little bit. It's like, oh, it's this, it's like a fantasy story now. So yeah,
dude, this is my advice to you. If nothing else, the rest of this interview, we can just, F it, junk it in the garbage. That you need to get your counselor's degree and start an online counselor opportunity for role players, and that is your niche, man. You would be like the counselor for roleplay nerds, dude. You would be rich tomorrow. You would be rich tomorrow. That is the craziest cool thing I've ever heard in my life.
That is super cool.
Counseling with roleplay character sheets, dude. Sign me up. Like, I'm in.
All right. What's interesting? Like, I hadn't thought about it in a while, but I ran it with my wife. I ran it with 2 other people. One person didn't get very far, but anyways, like we did a couple sessions, and they actually did have like some breakthroughs. My wife especially found it quite profound, and like deep what came up. So yeah, man, I think I appreciate that encouragement. I think you're right that could be really something powerful. And I think the thing is, like, you encouraging me is huge. That's what I mean, like doing this in a vacuum by yourself, creating anything is not.
Yes.
It doesn't feel right to you. It doesn't work. But like hearing you, and it's like, okay, cool. Let's chat. Let's set up a call. Let's have another in the kitchen where we run through. I don't know, but
absolutely,
figure it out.
Totally, let's do it.
That was going to be one of the. I was going to offer that, and I'm sure Michael, if he can get a word in edgewise from like me, Cameron on, but we want from all you guys, like let's get on here again and like run stuff, and we can tinker, and again, the whole point of these is that whole wider community aspect. So absolutely, we've got S Love in our audience today with Metal Mike 1, and there's only a couple today, but man, I feel like once this starts to spread as an idea for the homebrew community, I feel like that's exactly where we're headed. And yeah, please come back. With that being said, we're at the 10-minute mark for having an hour
Okay.
We don't want
Man, flew by. We can never talk for less than an hour, man. I've never been able to do it. I've never been on the phone. I'm like, let's just say hi for like 10 minutes, see what's up. And it's like 2 hours later. I'm like, okay, it's time for dinner. I actually have to go. Like, my wife's knocking on the door with a plate of food. I'm like, I gotta go. I'm sorry. But I will say one more thing. I feel called to extend the invitation or the idea or whatever to anyone listening who would be interested in doing this like role playing or like role playing. What did I call it? I had a name. I called it Thrive Quest. I don't know if that's too corporate, but that was the working title. But if anyone wants to do this, title, this role playing, life coaching. It's not counseling. Life coaching is nuanced. Won't go into that. It's a different thing. But yeah, I'd be happy to go through the channels, find me, go through you guys, and we'll do a couple. I'd love for people to play test, this idea, and we can do a few sessions for free, just so that I can get more feedback, and I think hopefully it would be valuable to the person, and if not, we'll just have some fun. But yeah, I wanted to extend that invitation to anyone listening who thinks that might be something they want to check out.
I think it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think it does too. That's brilliant. Well done. Even if it's not done. Is it done? Are you at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, I had it's a pretty straightforward process. There's a character creation process. I made a character sheet, which is your avatar, and then I have a basic framework that, you kind of create your end goal. You're what is your ideal life? We envision that together, and then you translate that to a fantasy world. Okay. So then that's the quest of your avatar character, and you're journeying to this idyllic life that you're envisioning, and then you see what kind of obstacles are standing in your way to reaching that life that that perfect idyllic life that you're envisioning. And then you that's your adventure. You see, okay, the first obstacle that stands in my way is procrastination. How could that be involved? What would you envision that? What kind of villain or monster or obstacle in a fantasy world, or however you want to flavor it, would you envision that thing? And then it's kind of a little bit of role playing, and a little bit of talking in a life coaching way. Because the way life coaching works is you don't give advice. That's one of the big rules that people don't get. I don't know how you should live your life at all. You know what I mean? I barely know how I should live my life. So it's really about asking powerful questions and letting people, draw from their own well of wisdom, and but helping them to find what's already within. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That is. There's no reason that we couldn't, maybe if you want to hit us up with that later, we could share that on our do you call them channels in Discord? This is my ignorance of the
channel. They're channels, yeah.
Yeah, on our channel, because again, and for whoever may be listening to this at whatever time, do please share with us. Reach out, touch base. Again, the community is the biggest chunk of this. Just to keep those ideas moving, keep the stories going, the really cool nerddom spreading. With all that in mind, I'm going to wrap us up here in just a moment so you can get about your day and we can do whatever we need to.
You waiting for me.
Right. Any final thoughts, Shams? Anything? Do you have a neat little quip? I hung up on one of our other interviewees recently. Michael and I have a thing where I do this, oh, hey, by the way, and then hang up. And I didn't warn anybody I was doing it. And apparently it might have freaked out Josh a little bit. Josh, shout out to Dungeon Tape. It was fun. I'm not going to hang up on you, Shams. I'm going to let you talk.
Hilarious. No, man. I mean, I wish I had a cool little quip. Now you're making me think I got to work on that. So maybe next time I'll have one ready. But no, man, just a shout out to you guys, to this community. This really cool what you guys are doing, and not only just what you're doing, but the energy you're doing it with. I want to honor and appreciate that, because I just feel warm vibes, cool vibes, chill vibes. It's a badass but laid back laid back community and vibe you guys are bringing. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, real cool.
Do you have? Adam just talked about our channels, but do you want to go ahead and give us or what where people can find you online and on? I know you've got a Discord too, and I know you're on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to throw those out and give specifics for, you know, if people are interested in the Thrive Quest, also of how they might be able to reach you without having to go through us too, if that's a thing. Or we're happy to set up a channel here. Yeah, for you.
Oh, sure. I mean, like, I check my Instagram fairly often. So the pen_n_blade. The N is like in and out, just the letter N. And I think that's probably the best place to reach out. But yeah, you know, bug Michael and Adam. You know, they don't have enough going on in their lives.
Yeah, do it.
Get in their face, and they'll send you my way.
Give us more. We love it.
Middle Mike threw up 3 hearts on our chat, just as an FYI.
He did.
That's awesome, Shams. I guess, man, with that in mind, we will wrap up. And thank you again, dude, for the time. I know it's a little later for you where you're at. So thank your lovely wife for letting us have you for an hour at the end of the day.
Also, give her a heads up. We are going to do like an episode where it's like wives of all of us nerd dudes. What it's like living with us. So that would be fun.
See what it's like from the other side.
I can't wait for that one. That's great.
It is. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll let you know.
Awesome.
Guys, this has been Shams Nelson. It has been great to chat with you, sir, in the kitchen. Please join us next week. We have another guest lined up. I don't remember who it is exactly.
Kelly.
Is it Kelly Williams
next
week?
Yeah.
Michael? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll be here next week with Kelly Williams. And as always, be creative, draw, write, invent, and don't forget, it's all in the sauce. We'll see you next time.
See you, Shams. Great talking to you.
Peace out, you guys.
Later, homie. Be well.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey. If you're still here listening, anybody, thanks again. This is a hoot. This is fun. And hopefully you are in an archive that's 100 interviews deep. And these old ones are fun to laugh at with how far we've already come. With that in mind, be well. And we will see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.